Welcome. You're invited on a journey, long, winding, and gentle, across the shifting sands and forgotten valleys of ancient lands. Tonight, we travel not with urgency, but with curiosity. Not in haste, but with quiet wonder. You are about to drift into a world where camels sway to the rhythm of distant footsteps and the scent of spices lingers in the air like a forgotten song. This is the story of the Silk Road, not a single path, but a web of trade routes stretching thousands of miles across continents. A journey not defined by a destination, but by the rhythm of its travelers, merchants, pilgrims, scholars, and dreamers, each carrying more than goods. They carried stories, ideas, faith, textiles, languages, and sometimes, even silence. As you begin to relax, let your breath slow to match the pace of a caravan at dusk. The warmth of day fades into a cool desert twilight. Dust settles. Bells on pack animals chime softly in the distance. You are safe here, in a moment suspended between past and present. Over the next 2 hours, we will explore the Silk Road through 4 lenses. First, we will gently immerse ourselves in the slow, steady rhythms of daily life along the ancient trade routes, what it felt like to live, to walk, to work under those endless skies. Then, we'll walk beside a single figure, Zhang Qian, the envoy of China's Han Dynasty, whose early journey carved the first connections westward. After that, we'll pause to ponder the mysteries of the desert, forgotten cities, buried manuscripts, and sacred monasteries. And finally, we'll turn our eyes toward the courts and capitals, the rarefied world of elites, emperors, and distant palaces where silks were worn but never seen born. And now, let us begin, slowly, with the rhythm of their lives. Oh, and if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. I am super curious where you're all listening from. So, drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Always blows my mind how people are falling asleep to this all over the world. Imagine waking before the sun. The desert is still cool, its heat lies hours ahead. A faint breeze slips through the thin linen of your tent or mud brick dwelling. Outside, the night's shadows are slowly fading, and a pale light touches the sand with silver. You hear the soft stirrings of the animals, camels shifting their weight, their padded feet pressing quietly into the dust. You are not a traveler today, but a resident of a Silk Road town. Perhaps it's Turpan, nestled in a deep basin fringed by flame-colored mountains. Or Merv, where irrigation turns the land green amid arid plains. Or Bamiyan, in the highlands, where Buddhist monasteries overlook quiet villages carved into the rock. Wherever you are, the rhythm of your life begins not with haste, but with preparation. The sun has not yet crested the eastern hills. You rise, as do others in your household. In one room, a child begins grinding grain with a hand stone, round and round, the stone whispering against stone. Another family member tends a small fire, coaxing embers back to life from the ashes of yesterday. A pot of water simmers, infused with tea leaves or herbs. If you're closer to China, it might be green tea. In Persia, perhaps it's a spiced infusion with mint or cinnamon bark. Bread is a constant. In many towns along the Silk Road, flatbreads are prepared in tandoor ovens, or baked on metal griddles. The scent of warm flour and smoke mingles with the aroma of tea and slowly stewing lentils or goat's milk. For wealthier families, there may be dates or almonds, a bit of honey, or dried apricots from distant orchards. Outside, the marketplace begins to stir. Merchants set out their wares beneath woven awnings. A potter arranges painted bowls in careful stacks. A weaver shakes out a length of dyed wool, letting the morning light catch the colors: saffron yellow, pomegranate red, lapis blue. And always, the smell of dust and spice, of warm stone, of lives unfolding at a measured pace. The Silk Road was never one road, and its people were never one people. In one village, you might hear Sogdian spoken in the streets, an Eastern Iranian language used by traders and scribes. In another, Uyghur or Turkic dialects might drift from open doorways. Near the Buddhist monasteries of Dunhuang, monks chant in Sanskrit or Chinese. In the markets of Balkh or Samarkand, Persian and Arabic intermingle with laughter and bargaining. You might pass by a Jewish merchant from Merv, wrapped in a woolen robe, adjusting the bundles on his donkey. A Nestorian Christian trader, pausing to offer a silent prayer beneath his breath as he enters a caravanserai. A Zoroastrian potter, his fingers stained with clay, placing offerings at a small fire altar in the privacy of his home. A Chinese herbalist, carefully arranging dried roots and preserved flowers into packets labeled in brushed calligraphy. All coexist. Not always peacefully, but with a shared dependence on the road. They barter, marry, raise children, and die, all beneath the wide and changing skies of the Silk Road. By midday, the sun is high and the pace slows. Laborers seek shade. Market stalls close their flaps to block the heat. In homes, curtains of woven reed or cloth are drawn, casting dappled shadows across cool earthen floors. Women spin thread or mend garments. Children chase one another between rows of olive trees or along irrigation channels. In oasis towns, water is life, stored in canets and brought forth in shallow stone ditches, guiding its coolness through fields of barley and melons. Artisans work steadily in shaded courtyards. A blacksmith, shirtless and sun-darkened, shapes a length of iron into horseshoes or hinges. A perfumer, measuring resin and crushed blossoms into tiny ceramic pots, preparing oils to be traded or offered in temples. A calligrapher, bent over scrolls, copies verses in careful strokes, religious texts, contracts, letters bound for distant lands. And always, there is movement. A caravan may arrive in the heat of day, camels swaying, tongues lolling, their burdens wrapped in leather and linen. Their drivers speak little as they guide the animals into rest. The beasts are unloaded, watered, and fed. Their feet have crossed hundreds of miles, and they will cross hundreds more. In the city square, men and women gather. Some to rest, others to listen. A storyteller spins tales, of distant wars, of divine signs in the sky, of lovers who crossed the desert for each other. Children sit cross-legged, wide-eyed. Elders nod, smiling faintly, perhaps remembering their own long walks through sun and sand. As the sun begins to lower, long shadows stretch across clay rooftops and earthen walls. The call of a muezzin may echo from a small minaret. Bells may chime in a monastery. A conch shell may sound in a distant temple. In homes across the region, evening meals are prepared. Bowls of rice or millet. Chickpeas stewed with onions. Lamb roasted slowly with cumin and herbs. Flatbreads are torn and shared. Fingers dipped. Voices soften. In wealthier homes, platters are decorated with fruits and sweets, pomegranate seeds, honey cakes, figs stuffed with crushed nuts. In humble homes, the meal is simpler, but no less sacred. This is the hour of togetherness. Of stories told around the fire. Of songs sung softly to drowsy children. Of plans made for tomorrow's journey, harvest, or sale. At the edge of a town, a shepherd whistles to his dog. A group of travelers light a fire in a caravanserai courtyard. A monk finishes copying a single page and gently presses it beneath a stone for drying. A woman closes the door of her home and sits beside her sleeping child, the glow of the hearth warm upon her face. The road does not stop, but it slows. And in that slowing, life unfolds. For travelers, the caravanserai is a sanctuary. Found roughly every 20 to 30 miles, these stone-built inns are both fortress and inn, offering security, food, and rest for those who wander. Imagine walking through its gate, your sandals coated in dust. The inner courtyard opens before you. Camels rest near a stone trough. Small fires crackle. Other travelers nod as you pass, their accents unfamiliar, but their presence somehow reassuring. Here, languages blend. Dishes are shared. Goods are traded, not always for silver, but for knowledge. You sit beside a stranger and listen. He tells of a storm in the mountains. Of a new tax levied by a local king. Of a monastery he visited that keeps a scroll with gold leaf illustrations of the Buddha's life. In return, you offer what you know, a safe pass, a trusted trader, a shortcut around a dried-up river. The caravanserai is not just a place to sleep. It is a node in the great net of Silk Road knowledge. A library of spoken word. Night comes quietly, with little fanfare. The sun sinks. The stars emerge. In the countryside, torches are lit. In towns, lamps glow through lattice windows. The air cools, fragrant with tamarisk, smoke, and the breath of livestock. You lie down, perhaps in a bed, perhaps on a mat, perhaps beneath the open sky. The sounds of the day fade, the hum of commerce, the lowing of camels, the creak of cart wheels. In their place comes quiet, punctuated only by a dog's bark in the distance, or the gentle stir of a wind playing across the earth. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear the thread of the Silk Road humming beneath you, an invisible line connecting you to countless others. From the shores of the Yellow Sea to the waters of the Mediterranean. From the snowy passes of the Pamirs to the date orchards of Persia. All of it, moving, changing, breathing. Just like you. Daily life along the Silk Road was not grand. It was not swift. But it was steady. And in that steadiness, there is something deeply comforting. The road itself was harsh. Sandstorms and bandits. Drought and illness. And yet, against those odds, people continued. They farmed. They prayed. They taught their children. They kept walking. And now, as we prepare to continue our own gentle walk through history, remember this. You are not alone. You travel among echoes. Among the footprints of millions. Among potsherds and prayer beads, spices and silks, letters and lullabies. Let us now move onward, into the deeper currents of history, where names are remembered, and decisions reshape the flow of time. Imagine standing at the edge of the Han Dynasty court, more than 2,000 years ago. The air is thick with incense and anticipation. Silk banners flutter softly in the warm air, and behind them, the emperor waits, watching. You are in the capital of Chang'an, a city already growing powerful and refined. Traders pass through its markets. Philosophers debate in shaded courtyards. Soldiers drill beyond the city walls. And now, something new is about to begin. A man stands before the throne. His name is Zhang Qian. He does not yet know what he will become, a pioneer, a prisoner, a legend. He does not know that his name will still be spoken centuries later, across continents. For now, he is simply a court official, tasked with a mission, to journey west, beyond the boundaries of the known. This is the story of Zhang Qian, not told in a rush, but walked slowly. As he walked, with patience, with hardship, and with quiet purpose. The year is around 138 BCE. The Han Empire has begun to stretch its influence outward, but the lands beyond are still uncertain. Mountains guard the west. Nomadic tribes move like whispers across the plains. No map can yet capture what lies beyond. Zhang Qian is not a soldier. He is a man of learning, strategy, and diplomacy. And Emperor Wu of Han has chosen him for a task that blends all three. At this time, the Xiongnu, a powerful confederation of nomadic peoples to the north and west, threaten China's borders. Their raids are swift. Their warriors skilled. Emperor Wu wishes to outflank them, not with swords, but with alliances. Rumors have reached the court of a distant people called the Yuezhi, once powerful, now displaced by the Xiongnu. If the Yuezhi could be found and allied with, perhaps together they could strike at the Xiongnu from two sides. It is a daring idea. Dangerous. Uncertain. Zhang Qian accepts without hesitation. He departs from Chang'an with a small group, including a guide, a man named Ganfu, said to be familiar with western regions. They travel westward, moving through narrow passes, skirting desert edges, crossing mountain-fed rivers. At first, the journey is careful. Measured. The days are long, but there is a sense of purpose. But soon, their path takes them through lands controlled by the Xiongnu. They are captured. Zhang Qian's first mission ends almost before it begins. He is taken north to the steppe lands and kept under watch in a Xiongnu settlement. It is not a prison in chains, but it is no less a captivity. He is given a wife. He lives among them. For over 10 years, he remains in exile. And yet, he does not give up. Imagine the days, long winters with wind howling across the plains. Summers of watching riders return with loot. He waits. Listens. Learns. And when the opportunity comes, after a decade, he escapes. With his wife and a few loyal companions, he flees westward once more. The journey is perilous, but now driven by deeper knowledge. He is no longer a stranger to hardship. Eventually, Zhang Qian reaches Bactria, the region that now lies within modern-day northern Afghanistan. Here, among rivers and orchards, are the remnants of Hellenistic civilization, the legacy of Alexander the Great. Greek inscriptions fade on stone walls. Locals wear garments blending east and west. Wine flows. Culture thrives. And here he finds the Yuezhi. They have rebuilt their society in this fertile land. But they are not interested in returning east to battle the Xiongnu. They have moved on. Settled. Become more concerned with trade and land than revenge. It is a quiet blow. After years of journeying, capture, escape, and effort, the Yuezhi decline the alliance. But Zhang Qian does not see the journey as a failure. He continues to travel among the regions of Fergana, Sogdiana, and Dayuan. He records the geography, the crops, the customs. He sees horses unlike any in China. Grapes grown for wine. Markets bustling with Indian and Persian goods. He takes note of everything. And eventually, he turns home. When Zhang Qian returns to China, 13 years have passed. The court barely remembers him. But when he finally stands once again before Emperor Wu, his presence is like a wind from a distant land, carrying with it scents and stories from a world previously unknown. He brings no alliance. But he brings something greater, knowledge. He tells of lands beyond the western mountains, of cities where people ride elephants and build temples of stone. He describes grapes that grow in clusters, of horses that sweat blood, of trade routes where silk is unknown but gold is common. He describes a world interconnected, complex, vibrant, and full of potential. For Emperor Wu, this is a revelation. The idea of trade expands. New military expeditions are planned. The seeds of the Silk Road, not yet named, are planted. And Zhang Qian is honored. But Zhang Qian's story does not end there. He is sent west once more, this time not in secret, but in official capacity, with a larger delegation. His mission now includes establishing trade, building diplomatic ties, and deepening knowledge. On this second journey, the team reaches Fergana once more. They encounter resistance. Not all regions welcome Han influence. There are skirmishes, setbacks, negotiations. Eventually, success. Fergana agrees to send their heavenly horses, strong, fast, unlike anything in China. Horses that had once been the pride of Persian and Greek militaries. Horses that can carry a warrior far across the desert. With these horses, China's military strength will grow. Trade will expand. The path west will widen. Zhang Qian returns again, older, weathered, but still calm. Still steady. His work becomes the foundation of a new strategy, not only for defense, but for cultural expansion. Zhang Qian died not long after his final return. His tomb is modest, and his name was, for a time, eclipsed by generals and emperors. But his true legacy lived on, in paths carved through mountains, in alliances made with distant peoples, and in the quiet knowledge he brought back from a world unknown. He did not name the Silk Road. That title would come later. But he walked its first steps. He made it real. And through him, China learned that it was not alone. Following Zhang Qian's missions, trade flourished. Chinese silk began appearing in Persia, and eventually in Rome. In return came horses, wool, glass, and new ideas. Buddhism began its slow migration into China through these newly opened pathways. So too did musical instruments, medical knowledge, and art styles. The Silk Road was never a highway. It was a network. And Zhang Qian was its first strand. His journeys taught the Han court, and the world, that connection was possible. That difference need not mean isolation. That even across vast deserts, cultures could meet. Zhang Qian was not a conqueror. He brought no wealth. He built no monuments. But what he carried was quieter, and perhaps more enduring. A vision of the world not as closed kingdoms, but as a web of relationships, fragile, yet enduring. He walked for years. Lived in captivity. Endured loss and distance. And when given the chance, he returned not with complaint, but with clarity. His story reminds us that movement matters, even when it seems uncertain. That patience can shape the future. That even a long detour can lead to a vital destination. And tonight, as you rest, perhaps there is comfort in that. In knowing that history is often changed not by victory, but by quiet persistence. By those who carry messages, not swords. Zhang Qian walked into the unknown. And because he did, the world grew larger. Imagine standing at the edge of an empty desert. The sand is still, the sky wide and pale. There is no wind, only silence, so complete that even your own breath feels like an intrusion. And then, you see it. Just a ripple in the earth at first, a broken wall, a low arch buried in shifting dunes. A trace of something ancient. Forgotten. This is not a ruin with tourists and signs. This is a memory, weathered and half-lost. One of the many along the ancient Silk Road, where once thriving cities and sacred spaces now sleep beneath the dust. This is the heart of the road's mystery. What was left behind, and why it disappeared. Let us begin with Lulan. Once a bustling city-state near the eastern edge of the Taklamakan Desert, Lulan was a vital Silk Road stop, a crossroads of goods and cultures. Travelers came here to rest, to refill their water skins, to trade for dates, salt, and silk. Its houses were built of reeds and wood, its people, a mix of Chinese, Indo-European, and Central Asian origin. But now, there is nothing. No market noise. No footsteps. Only sand. Lulan was abandoned more than 1,000 years ago. Scholars still debate the exact reason. Some say the river that fed it, the Darim, shifted its course, slowly choking the city's lifeblood. Others point to political instability, or desertification brought on by overuse of water and wood. Archaeologists have uncovered shoes, letters written in ancient Chinese, combs carved from wood, and the remains of walls. One remarkable discovery is the Lulan Beauty, a woman's mummified body, preserved by the dry desert air for over 3,800 years. Her features are delicate, her hair braided. She is not Chinese, but likely Indo-European, evidence of ancient migration, of earlier trade long before official records. She does not speak, but her presence is undeniable. Lulan's silence is not emptiness, it is full of echoes. From the lost city of Lulan, we turn to something found, Dunhuang, a desert town that guarded the entrance to China from the west. Here, nestled into cliffs of ochre stone, lie the Mogeo Caves, also known as the Caves of the Thousand Buddhas. Carved over 1,000 years by monks, artists, and pilgrims, these caves are more than shelters. They are visions, painted in still color, long after the hands that painted them turned to dust. Inside, frescoes depict stories of the Buddha, heavenly beings drifting among clouds, musicians playing lutes and flutes, merchants offering gifts. Some figures wear Persian robes. Others bear the facial features of India, or Central Asia. Each image tells a story. Not just of faith, but of interconnection, of a road not simply of trade, but of transformation. And then, there is the mystery. In the year 1900, a hidden chamber was discovered, Cave 17, long sealed and forgotten. Inside were thousands of scrolls, manuscripts, and paintings, untouched for nearly a millennium. Among them were texts in Sanskrit, Chinese, Tibetan, Sogdian, Khotanese, and more. Buddhist sutras, Taoist incantations, government records, merchant receipts, and private letters. Some were on silk. Others on paper. One of them, known today as the Diamond Sutra, is considered the world's earliest printed book, dated to the year 868 CE. The chamber had been sealed, scholars believe, in an effort to protect it during a time of conflict. It remained hidden through centuries of sand and silence. Imagine that, a room full of forgotten voices, waiting nearly 1,000 years to be heard again. Now let us travel west, to the green valleys of Afghanistan, where mountains rise like ancient guardians and rivers snake through wide fields. Here, in the town of Bamiyan, once stood two immense Buddha statues, carved directly into the sandstone cliffs, one nearly 180 feet tall, the other over 120 feet. They were serene, their robes flowing in long, carved folds. For centuries, they watched over travelers moving between Persia and India, offering protection and peace. They stood not only as religious symbols, but as testaments to shared art, the blending of Greek, Indian, and Central Asian styles. Their halos echoed Hellenistic sculpture. Their hands, formed in ancient mudras, blessed those who passed below. But today, they are gone. In the year 2001, the statues were destroyed, blasted with explosives during a time of fanaticism and fear. And yet, they remain. Their niches still yawn open, vast and hollow, holding not absence, but memory. Archaeologists have since discovered intricate cave temples, hidden frescoes with radiant colors, and passages that once held oil lamps flickering in darkness. Some colors, especially vivid blues, were made with lapis lazuli, a stone carried by traders from far away. Imagine that, the labor of monks carving, painting, praying. A culture built not on conquest, but on patience. And how even when erased, its imprint lingers. The Silk Road left not just physical remains, but linguistic footprints, scripts carved into stone, scrawled on potsherds, painted on cave walls. In Naya, another buried city in the Taklamakan, archaeologists found wooden tablets covered in Kharosthi script, a language from ancient Gandhara, in modern-day Pakistan. They tell of marriage contracts, trade deals, and complaints from farmers, daily life captured in fragile handwriting. In the far west, Sogdian graffiti marks cave walls in Dunhuang, phrases like, "So-and-so passed here, the caravan was delayed, may the gods bless my journey." Simple. Human. In Karakoto, a once powerful city now buried in the sands of Inner Mongolia, texts in Tangut were discovered, a language and culture long vanished. The city, rich with towers and temples, was deserted suddenly. The texts tell of taxes, prayers, and dreams. Each language, each script, is a voice. And though the voices are faded, they are not silent. What emerges from these sites is not a single culture, but a woven tapestry, intricate and multicolored. In Turpan, Buddhist temples stood near Zoroastrian fire altars. In Samarkand, Islamic calligraphy was carved into walls that once bore Sogdian designs. In Taxila, Coins bearing Greek gods circulated among Indian merchants who wore Central Asian tunics. Even the fabrics carried through the Silk Road tell a story. Chinese silk dyed with Persian indigo, patterned in Indian styles, hemmed with Roman glass beads. A single robe could tell a dozen histories. This was the beauty of the road. It did not homogenize. It wove. It allowed each strand to remain distinct, even as it became part of something larger. Many cities of the Silk Road are now ruins. Erosion took some. War, others. Climate change, neglect, and time have played their quiet parts. But what remains, what always remains, is presence. A bowl, cracked but whole. A bead of lapis, smoothed by fingers long gone. A letter in faded ink, where a mother tells her son to be careful, and to come home soon. These fragments may be small. But together, they whisper. They whisper of lives lived not in glory, but in persistence. Not in palaces, but along the road. And perhaps that is where we find the deepest comfort. Let us pause here, beneath a painted ceiling in a cave once lit by oil lamps. Let us sit in silence, with only the wind and the dust as company. The Silk Road was not just about gold and goods. It was about exchange, not only of objects, but of meaning. Of beliefs. Of ways of living. And long after the merchants moved on, long after the cities were buried and the languages faded, what was exchanged remains. Memory. Imagination. The unseen thread. Even in the dust, the Silk Road whispers. And if you listen gently, with patience, you can still hear it. Imagine yourself stepping quietly into the shaded courtyards of a distant palace, far from the dusty roads and bustling caravanserais. Here, life moves to a different rhythm, measured, refined, and carefully patterned. The Silk Road was a passage not only for merchants and travelers but also for emperors, nobles, and elite families whose lives shaped the culture and power of the regions it touched. Tonight, we will walk through their chambers. We will glimpse their routines, their luxuries, their struggles. We will see how their world contrasted, and yet connected, with the lives of those who journeyed far beneath them. At the center of the Eastern Silk Road lay the city of Chang'an, the Han Dynasty capital, a sprawling metropolis crowned by the emperor's palace. Imagine vast halls with painted beams, glistening jade, and silk banners that swayed gently in the soft breeze from garden ponds. The air is thick with the scent of sandalwood incense, mingling with blooming magnolia and lotus flowers. Within these walls lived the emperor and his court, a world apart from the dust of the roads. Here, courtiers in flowing robes embroidered with phoenixes and dragons move with quiet ceremony. Servants attend their masters with practiced grace, carrying trays of delicately prepared tea and sweet pastries. The emperor's days are filled with meetings of advisors, scribes, and generals, each word measured, each gesture meaningful. The pace is steady, but beneath the calm lies the constant rhythm of politics, alliances formed, rivals watched, plans laid for expansion. The Silk Road's influence reaches even here, in the choice of gifts sent or received, an exquisitely woven Sogdian scarf, rare lapis lazuli stones, horses known as blood-sweating, for their speed and endurance. These objects signify more than wealth, they are tokens of connection, power, and diplomacy. Beyond the palace, in the city's winding alleys, lived a different kind of elite, merchants who thrived on the commerce the Silk Road brought. These traders were often wealthy families who owned caravans and warehouses. Their homes, built with timber and brick, boasted courtyards lush with pomegranate and apricot trees. The scent of fresh fruit mingled with the rich aroma of spiced tea. Imagine a merchant study, a room lined with scrolls detailing accounts, contracts, and ledgers. By the light of a flickering lantern, a trader pores over the figures, calculating profits and losses, tracking goods moving thousands of miles. These merchants were both cautious and bold. They balanced risk with opportunity. A caravan might carry silk bolts, jade trinkets, or precious spices to distant lands, returning with lapis, gold coins, or even exotic animals. Their social status was complex, sometimes envied, sometimes mistrusted by the traditional aristocracy. But their influence grew as the Silk Road flourished, weaving them into the fabric of power. In the shadowed inner chambers of palaces and wealthy homes, women of the elite wielded quiet power. Imagine the gentle sound of a lute playing in a richly decorated room. The walls are adorned with silk tapestries embroidered with peonies and cranes, symbols of beauty and longevity. Noblewomen mastered arts like calligraphy, poetry, and music. They hosted salons where ideas traveled as swiftly as silk. Their influence was subtle, shaping court fashions, guiding political marriages, and nurturing alliances. Yet, their lives were also constrained by expectations and tradition. Their movements were often limited to the inner quarters, their voices heard mainly in whispers and poetry. Some, however, rose above these confines, patrons of art, spiritual leaders, or even advisors to emperors. Their stories, though often lost or hidden, ripple beneath the surface of history. Far from palaces, along the roads threading through deserts and mountains, were caravanserais, inns and resting places for travelers and merchants. Picture a quiet courtyard enclosed by high walls of sun-baked brick. A well stands in the center, its water cool and clear. Around the courtyard, travelers from many lands rest their camels and horses, share meals of dried fruit and flatbread, and exchange news. At night, the firelight flickers on faces of Sogdian traders, Persian merchants, Indian spice dealers, and Chinese silk weavers. Their languages mix softly, forming a gentle hum. Stories are told, of distant cities, strange customs, or simple hopes to return home safely. The caravanserai is a crossroads not only of goods but of cultures and ideas, a place where differences are softened by shared journeys and common rest. The contrast between palace life and the road could not be sharper. While the emperor's court enjoyed delicate foods, fine silks, and intricate ceremonies, the merchant caravans faced the unpredictability of weather, bandits, and long nights under the stars. But there was also connection. The goods carried on camelback nourished courtly rituals. The horses gifted to generals came from distant pastures. The poetry composed in inner chambers echoed themes heard in roadside taverns. Elite families often invested in caravans. They sponsored temples and festivals honoring gods from many lands, Buddhist, Zoroastrian, Taoist. And sometimes, common travelers, skilled artisans, soldiers, or monks, rose through ranks, entering courts and influencing policies. The Silk Road was a tapestry of lives, interwoven with threads of power and humility. Imagine waking in a silk-draped chamber as dawn light filters softly through paper screens. A servant brings a cup of warm tea infused with jasmine and mint. The day unfolds with measured tasks, letters to be written, guests to be received, gardens tended. Meals are occasions of refinement, steamed buns filled with sweet bean paste, fragrant rice dishes, delicate slices of fruit. In the gardens, bamboo leaves whisper in the breeze. A calligrapher practices strokes, mindful and deliberate. A scholar contemplates the horizon, his thoughts drifting like clouds. Even leisure is an art, games of strategy, musical performances, quiet poetry recitals. This rhythm is both a privilege and a pattern, comforting in its steadiness, but also a careful choreography of status and expectation. The elites along the Silk Road embraced many spiritual paths. Buddhism flourished, its monks traveling from India to China, founding monasteries along the road. Temples became centers of learning and art, places where silk banners fluttered softly and incense smoke rose in delicate spirals. Taoism shaped court rituals and personal practices, emphasizing harmony with nature and inner peace. Zoroastrian fire temples stood in Central Asia, their flames tended carefully through centuries. Elite patrons often commissioned religious art, paintings, statues, manuscripts, works meant to inspire both devotion and political legitimacy. As we close this segment, imagine walking slowly away from the grand palaces and quiet caravanserais into the soft twilight. The Silk Road was a place of contrast, between wealth and toil, silence and story, permanence and journey. Yet, it was also a place of connection, where patterns met and mingled, creating a world both complex and beautiful. Tonight, as you rest, remember that history is not only made in battles or laws, but in the quiet rhythms of daily life, each breath, each step, each thread woven carefully into the fabric of time. Imagine, once more, the vastness of the Silk Road. It is no single path, but a network, braided like cord, winding across deserts and mountains, along rivers and through high passes. A map not only of trade, but of dreams. We began this journey with the quiet rhythm of daily life, of clay ovens and twilight prayers, of calloused hands and familiar paths through dust. We walked beside merchants, potters, and weavers, whose world was simple but never small. Then we followed the footsteps of Zhang Qian, his long exile, his vision, and his return. A solitary man carrying the first threads of connection between distant empires. A journey not made for wealth or conquest, but for knowledge. From there, we moved through the forgotten, cities buried in sand, scrolls sealed in caves, temples crumbling beneath time. 1,000 voices, silenced but never erased. We listened for what remains, for the spaces between words, and the sacred weight of silence. And finally, we climbed into the chambers of the powerful. We saw how silk, so delicate, so soft, could bear the weight of empires. How it passed between the fingers of queens and emperors, monks and slaves, never touching the ground, yet always shaped by it. Each segment of our journey was distinct, but all were bound by a single, unbroken thread. Through all the dust and devotion, through gold and grain, the Silk Road pulsed with a rhythm, a quiet persistence. Traders rose before the sun. Scribes bent over parchment. Courtiers waited for messengers. And across every mile, people moved. Slowly. Patiently. Purposefully. It was not a world of haste. Not even of certainty. Caravans did not always arrive. Treaties faltered. Cities fell. Yet still, people journeyed. For trade. For faith. For family. for the simple hope of return. And in this rhythm, there is something deeply human. Something enduring. Tonight, as you lie still, perhaps with your eyes closed or your breath softened, consider how much has changed, and how much has not. Silk is no longer a mystery. The cities of the Silk Road have modern names. Trains and planes cross borders in hours, not months. But still, we trade. We wonder. We seek meaning in distant places. The echoes of that long road remain, in fabrics and stories, in shared words, in the way we imagine other lives. We carry its memory not in maps, but in the invisible thread that ties cultures together. The Silk Road was never truly a place. It was a connection. A movement. A conversation across time. Let us end with a simple image. Night falls on the steppe. The stars rise slowly, one by one, vast and undisturbed. A caravan prepares to rest. Camels kneel on the earth. Their burdens are lifted. A low fire crackles, its glow casting flickering shapes against the dark. Somewhere, a traveler hums a tune remembered from home. Another counts coins, not from greed, but from habit. A few sit in quiet prayer. Others simply breathe in the stillness. And then, sleep. Tomorrow, the journey resumes. But for now, in this timeless space between movement and memory, everything is calm. And so too, may your mind rest. Let the roads grow faint. Let the names drift into silence. Let the thread remain, gentle and unbroken, holding you in the soft stillness of night. Good night, traveler.